Everybody have a note sheet. Now, before we get started, are there questions over the homework? All right. If there's no questions over the homework, we're going to go on and get started. I'm going to write these up as we go. Because what we're doing today is, well, more factoring. We're doing more factoring. And the first step in factoring is to see if there is a greatest common factor, our GCF. So looking at this here, is there a greatest common factor between 8x squared, negative 56x, and 48? 8. And the first thing we want to do is factor that out. So if we factor 8 out of 8x squared, we divide it by 8, we're left with x squared minus 56 divided by 8 would be 7x plus 48 divided by 8 is 6. Because we can do it in our head or let the calculator do it for us. Either way, we will get to this here. Our second step is to write our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. And the two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces is just helping us make sure we have enough space for all of our terms. Step number 3 is to find the sign. If the third term is positive, then the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, then the signs are opposite. Yes. I'm rewriting these back out just so we can see them, we can reference them. Y'all have written them out at least once so far. But again, it's the same thing we've been walking through each time. So, the third term for us here, the sign of the third term, we're looking at the sign of 6, is positive. And since the third term is positive,
then you got to look at the next one, and that's negative, so they're both negative.
So we would look at the middle one, and they're both negative. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. Step number 4 is to find the factors of the first and third term. And once we do that, we can plug them in and check. So let's look at our factors of our first term. We're looking for the factors of x squared. Well, there's only one set. X and x. Really, it's just that variable squared. The only set we have is x and x. Now, since there's not a number in front of the x squared besides 1, first spots are just x and x. Now we need the factors of 6. 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Which one do we want to try first? 1 and 6. And last thing we need to do is to check. Now we don't necessarily need to check the x times x, because x times x is indeed x squared. We don't necessarily need to check the negative 1 times negative 6, because negative 1 times negative 6 is positive 6. X times negative 6 is negative 6x. Negative 1 times x is negative x, giving us negative 7x. Is that the middle term we wanted? One thing I will say is kind of more, a little bit of a side note. If we do have a greatest common factor, it needs to be listed in the answer, because it is part of the factors. Because our final answer should be the factored form of our 8x squared minus 56x plus 48. If we leave it off, we're really just listing the factors for this here. We need the 8. It is a part of the answer. Questions on this here? 14x squared plus 31x plus 15. Unfortunately for this one here, there is no greatest common factor between all three terms. So we move on to step 2. 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Find the sign. If the third term is positive, then the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, our signs are opposite. Here, the third term is positive, so the signs are the same, and they match the sign of the middle term, plus and plus. Now, we're going to find the factors of the first and third. We're not so much worried about the middle term, because the middle term comes from the first and third's product. We're going to look at 14x squared. 14x. So the x squared part is going to be x and x. That's only where we have x squared. So our factors are 14, 1 and 14, 2 and 7. Which one of these two factors do we want to try first? 2 and 7. 2, 7. One and 15 or 3 and 5. Which one of these two do we want to try first? 3 and 5. 3 in the first, 5 in the second. And then we can check. Again, I don't care too much about checking 2x times 7x, because 2 times 7 is 14. X times x is x squared. Only time that would not get us back to 14x squared is if you didn't actually get the correct factors of 14. So if you did 3 and 7, it would give us the wrong number. So not too focused on that there. Now 2x times 5 is 10x. 3 times 7x is positive 21x. And 10x plus 21x is 31x. Now we can't necessarily do the 10x plus 21x in the calculator, because both calculators that we have that y'all can use require a value for x. So we can't just type it in that way. But we can type in the coefficients. The coefficients are the numbers in front of x. One and 14. Let's see. X plus. So if we did this here, x times 1 would be x. 15 times 14 would be 210. So that, and if we put them in the same parentheses, it would be 29, or it'd be 30. So, no, that's a good thought. Yeah. because I don't feel comfortable saying that there's not more than one way to do this, but for the most part, I have not seen a case, because this is going to be really the only way we can factor this and get the factors of this here. The only other way that it would is if we had a scalar or just essentially a greatest common factor. Yeah. Questions on this here? We're ready for the next one. 2x squared minus 7x plus 5. Is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? Two sets of parentheses with three spaces. Okay.
There's no common factor that I can see.
So let's look at the third term. Is the third term, if the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. So here the third term is
Positive.
So the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. Negative, negative. Factors of the first term are 2x squared. We would indeed have x and x. Factors of 2. 1 and 2. So we need to just put 2 in one of the places. Which one?
I like the second.
Okay. Factors of 5. 1 and 5. So where do we want to put the 1? Where do we want to put the 5?
Yeah.
1 and 5. And we can check. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Negative 1 times 2x is negative 2x. Negative 5x minus 2x is negative 7x. Is that the middle term we wanted? Yes. Now again, we can't plug negative 5x minus 2x in the calculator, but I could plug negative 5 minus 2, because we can subtract or do our coefficients. And it would tell us it's negative 7, so it is negative 7x. Questions on this here? 3x squared minus 14x plus 8. Is there a greatest common factor? No. Third term. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. So here it is positive, so they are the same. And they're both going to be negative. Now we need to find the factors of 3x squared. Well, x squared is x and x. Factors of 3 are 1 and 3. We don't have any others. 3 in the second one. Our factors of 8 are 1 and 8 or 2 and 4. Which one do we want to try first? 2 and 4. 2 or 4, which one do you want to put in the first? 2 in the front, 4 in the second. And last thing we can do is check and make sure. X times negative 4 is negative 4x. Negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. And negative 4x minus 6x is negative 10x. Is that the middle term we wanted? So we're going to need to switch something. I normally switch the constant term, the third term first. It's factors first. So that would be 4 and 2, and try it again. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. Negative 4 times 3x would be negative 12x. Negative 2x minus 12x, negative 2 minus 12 is negative 14x. Is that the middle term we wanted?
Yes.
And that's it. Questions on this here? We're ready for the next one. 4x squared minus 19x minus 5. Is there a greatest common factor?
No.
Two sets of parentheses.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and this one's our first one with difference.
Yes. The third term is positive, then the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. And since the third term is negative, our signs are opposite. One's positive, one's negative. We really don't look at the middle term because, again, they're opposite. One's going to be positive, one is going to be negative.
4x. 2. So there's that. There's 2 and 2, and then there's 1.
4, 1 and 4. 2 and 2. 2 and 2. Factors of 5 are 1 and 5. Where do we want to put the 5? 5, 1. Last thing we need to do is check. 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. 5 times 2x is plus 10x, giving us positive 8x. Well, because if we switch the 1 and 5,
so then we do the switch it to 1 and
1
4.
and 4. Yeah, switching the 1 and 5, it technically does change it, but doesn't at the same time. Because instead of getting positive 8x, we would get negative 8x is the main change. Now, switching the 2 and 2 to 1 and 4, where do you want to put the 4? And let's check this again. So we're going to do x times negative 1, which is negative x. 5 times 4x is positive 20x. And negative x plus 20x, and negative 1 plus 20 is 19x. Is that what we wanted? I mean, yes and no. We want 19x, but we don't need it positive, we need it. I would switch the signs. Now, it is possible to switch our terms. I would need to switch the x and 4x. So we need to switch the 1 and 4. And I would need to switch the 1 and 5. So we would have to flip everything except for the signs. Or I can just change the signs. I think it's easier just to change the signs than it is to switch the x's, switch the 1 and 5. I'd rather switch one thing than try to switch multiple. Check it. X times 1 is x. Negative 5 times 4x is negative 20x, giving us our negative 19x. If we get the correct number but wrong sign, change the signs. Questions on this here? We feel comfortable with this here. 6x squared plus x minus 12.
They both have 6, but I don't know.
It would be anything because x is just
Since the middle term is 1, we don't have a greatest common factor. There is one between 6 and 12, but since the middle one doesn't have it also, there is no greatest common factor. It has to be in common with everyone.
The things are opposite.
Since the third term is negative, our signs are indeed opposite. Factors of 6x squared, we would have x and x for x squared.
1 and 6.
1 and 6, 2 and 3. Which ones of these do we want to use first? 1 and 6? So we'll try 1 and 6 first. Now our factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. So I like listing the factors this way. So I start with 1 and 12 every single time. And then the number after 1 is 2. So we see if 2 is divisible by it. If it is, I list it 2 and 12. Then I go to 3. 3 times 4. Next number after 3 is 4. We already have it. We are done. I find that is a nice way to make sure I have all the factors, because when the two sides of those factors meet, we're done, because there aren't any more. Which one of these do we want to try first? So which number is going to go first? We don't have to check this. So was there a greatest common factor to begin with? Well, no, right? There's not one. Is there a common factor in this setup? 6x and 2 have a common factor of 2. So can we put the 2 and 6 together? 6x and 2? Well, no, because if we did check this, 6x times 6 is negative 36x. 2 times x is plus 2x, giving us negative 34x. Because again, if there's no greatest common factor to begin with, we can't have one in either set of parentheses. So the 6x and 2 can't go together. I'm going to flip it. Would this work? Well, now we have what? 6x and 6. Do they have a common factor? So would this work? No, because we'd have negative 12 plus 6, which is negative 6, so that doesn't work. Common factor, that's out. Okay. Let's try 3 and 4. Well, wait a minute. 6x and 3 have a common factor of 3. Okay. If I switch the 3 and 4, well, 6x and 4 have a common factor of 2. If there wasn't one to begin with. So the only one with 1 and 6 for x that works is 1 and 12, and the 1 has to be with the 6. 6x times 12 is negative 72. We're way far away from it. 2 and 3. I'm going to put this 2, this 3. So I'm going to go through this here. So pause on writing. So let's see here, looking at the other arrangements that we have for 2 and 3. So I'm going to write these out so that we see these. If I tried 1 and 12, 3x and 12 have a common factor of 3, yes? This arrangement doesn't work. Well, 3x and 1 don't have a common factor, but 2x and 12 do. So that doesn't work. Right, because 2 and 6, 2x and 2, 3x and 6. If we flipped it, 3x minus 2 doesn't have a common factor, but 2x plus 6 does. So it is out. This is the first one with 2 and 3 that doesn't have common factors. 2x plus 3 does not have one. 3x minus 4 does not have one. And if we check this, 2x times negative 4 is negative 8x. 3 times 3x is positive 9x, giving us x. So really just knowing the fact that since the first one didn't have a greatest common factor, the others can't, even with just 2x and 3x, 5 of the 6 possible arrangements we got rid of because we know they wouldn't work. That's 5 less that we have to check. Questions on this here? Negative 4x squared minus 8x plus 5. There is technically a greatest common factor. Now, all these here, and one of the big things that the reason this works the way it does is because A, our number in front of x squared is positive. If we leave it as a negative, it makes things work a little bit weird. We actually have to find the factors of, in this case, -4. But there's a way that we can get rid of that negative, and that's by factoring it out. We're going to divide everything by -1. If a is negative, if that number in front of x squared is negative, we factor the negative out. If there's also a greatest common factor, we take it out too. So if it had a greatest common factor of 2, we would take out -2. Now factoring out -1 is actually not as bad as it seems, because 4x squared divided by 1 is just 4x squared. Our negative divided by a negative is a positive. -8x divided by -1, well, the negative divided by negative makes it positive, and we have 8x. 5 divided by -1, positive divided by a negative is -5. So really all we do is take that negative, bring it out front, and we're just switching the signs all the way through. So really, if the first term is negative, we factor out the negative. If there's also greatest common factor, we factor it out too. Third term. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. One's positive, one's negative. Now we're going to find the factors of 4x squared. So x squared would be x and x, 4. 1 and 4, or 2 and 2. Which one do we want to try first? 2 and 2. Because we really just need to put. So 8 in terms of the other two. Is it kind of closer to it or farther away from it? So 8 compared to 5 and 4, it's kind of more closer to it. So probably the factors are going to be closer to each other. So more likely to have 5, 2, and 2. Not always. 5 and 1. Check. 2x times -1 is -2x. 5, positive 5 times 2x is plus 10x. And -2x plus 10x is 8x. That's the middle term we wanted. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Questions on this here? Let's look at this one here. -9x squared minus 3x plus 2. We need to get rid of the negative. So we divide it by -1 because we want to simplify that negative out. So it'll give us negative parentheses 9x squared plus 3x minus 2. So our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Since the third term is negative, our signs are opposite. Factors of the first and third term are 9x squared. Well, x squared is indeed x and x. 9 is 1 and 9 or 3 and 3. Which one do we want to try first? 1 and 9. Factors of 2 are 1 and 2. Where do we want to put the 1? Where do we want to put the 2? Well, I'll just stick them here. And we can check. X times -2 is -2x. 1 times 9x is plus 9x, giving us positive 7x. Is that the middle term we wanted? No, so what can we switch? We can switch the 1 and 2. And we can check this again. X times negative 1 is negative x. 2 times 9x is plus 18x, giving us 17x. Is that the middle term we wanted? So since we've gone through every possible arrangement of the factors of our third term, we can switch over 2, 3, and 3. We'll check it again. 3x times negative 1 is negative 3x. Positive 2 times positive 3x is plus 6x. And negative 3x plus 6x is positive 3x. All right, guys. Questions on this so far?
I think I've got it. It's just a process.
It's the process of getting to the final answer.
Yeah. Is this all we're doing?
Yeah. It's a lot of guess and check.
Is this like just anything else about wait, or is this?
We do. We'll have one more thing we'll do tomorrow, but it's just taking it further.
Okay. Could you give us the homework?
We'll hear in a second. All right, guys. Do we need to see another example of one of these here?
I feel like I get it.
11 through 23 odd.